Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today is Sunday, but it's not going to be a weekly overlook due to personal reasons. But today is the first forecast that I am going to make since going on vacation and getting everything set up for Project Gladiator. This was a much needed break, and I'm glad to be back. But today we're currently looking at a threat for severe weather where we typically don't get a lot of severe weather, with a marginal threat with some areas of slight risk. Um, and this is being mostly triggered because of a low pressure system making its way south out of Canada with some strong mid level and upper level winds, but minus the low level winds. And I'll talk about that later. If we take a look at our overall threats here, you can see that we have little to no tornado threat, but we do have the potential for some damaging winds and maybe the potential for some small hail throughout some areas. We also do have a marginal risk for the coast of Georgia into northern Florida. This will also allow for maybe the potential for some small hail and maybe some damaging winds, but again, likely no tornadoes. Let's take a look at our pivotal weather models here. Looking at our 5 millibars here, you can see that low pressure system making its way out of Canada here, ejecting some strong mid-level and upper-level winds throughout much of the area that's going to be affecting. It's likely to continue eastward through Washington, Oregon, and Idaho into Montana by tomorrow. Uh, Again, continuing the threat for some prolonged severe thunderstorms and severe weather development. But however, without the lack of low levels, strong low levels again, any wind shear is likely going to be isolated to the mid levels and upper levels, and allow for the potential for some more upper level and mid level rotating supercells. But it's like the rotation is likely going to be very broad and very weak. Taking a look at our low level winds here, you can see that there is little to no low level winds throughout the area being affected. Um, However, strong mid-level winds, but the lack of low-level winds is going to allow for some the potential for some mid to upper base supercell to develop with some fairly weaker end and broad rotation, but likely no tornadoes. However, rotation is definitely possible. It is likely not going to produce any tornadoes, and because instability and humidity is very limited, as well as rotation being mostly limited to the mid levels and upper levels, um, as well as this area being very mountainous, overall making tornadoes very unlikely. Taking a look at dew points here, you can see for much of the area being affected further up north, you can see that there are dew points in the 50s, mid 50s, and upper 50s, and probably some into the 40s as well. Not terribly crazy humidity, but it is definitely sufficient enough for some severe thunderstorm development, but it's nothing like we saw last week and the week before that. Um, However, it is still definitely sufficient enough for some severe weather development. Taking a look at our instability here, you can see that there isn't really much to start off with, but then you see two areas that is likely going to have some very weak, fairly weaker instability, but definitely still sufficient to help support um, some severe thunderstorm development, as well as maybe the potential for some large hail, and maybe the potential for some strong updrafts to develop and suspend those rain particles and create small hail, and allow for maybe some very weak and broad rotation. Then taking a look at our surface instability here, you can see again nothing really to start off with, but then you can see continuing further, you can see a tons of widespread weaker end to fairly higher end surface instability to allow for sufficient enough for the potential for some strong updrafts to develop, as well as maybe the potential for some very weak and broad rotation again, and I'll show you why on the wind shear here in a moment, but as well as this allowing for the potential for some small hail. Moving on to the wind shear here, the reason why I'm using the entire spectrum of the atmosphere instead of low levels right now is because with research earlier, we can roll out very weak surface wind shear or low level wind shear, primarily being isolated to more mid level wind shear and upper level wind shear. So that's the primary reason why I'm looking at the entire spectrum for wind shear, because again, weaker low level wind shear likely not going to cause much of anything, but it's definitely still allows for some weak, very weak surface rotation. But you can see continuing forward, you can see a mass of strong mid-level to upper-level wind shear throughout much of the area of it's a very mountainous area, but it is definitely still sufficient enough. And then you can see throughout Oregon and Idaho. Uh, Again, it's fairly weaker end towards the mid levels and upper levels. Definitely still sufficient enough for some moderate mid level and upper level rotation, but again, definitely not enough for some surface rotation and anywhere close to any tornado potential. And then finally, to finish it off, let's take a look at the SIGTOR. Again, as I've said pretty much every video that I've looked at this is not something you want to rely on, but it is good. It is something to look at to sum everything up together. You can see around the areas, you can see two small areas of very, very, very small SIGTOR signatures, I would say. But this is likely going to be just very, very weak and broad rotation, and likely, again, not to be any tornadic, or definitely not any tornadic possibilities. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator. And please join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator, and I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.